to my other monitor.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give most people about 5 minutes to join. We've got about 35 people attending today.
Mhm.
Yep.
We've got 6 online so far.
Okay, cool.
Welcome everyone. Stephen Dummett here from the Toowoomba Strat Basin Enterprise. We're going to give it about a 5-minute wait as people join us. Once I see we've got the vast majority, we will kick things off. So appreciate your patience and thank you for joining us tonight for this very important webinar.
Silence is golden, huh? Sorry, I'm a bit out of the box.
You're well and truly comfortable in a room full of friends, Connor. Don't worry about it.
Thanks, Stephen.
I loved your video. Actually, it was very inspiring.
In fact, it's strange that you should mention that. It's we made that video almost 18 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and not a single stitch of it has changed.
Yeah.
Despite everything that's gone on.
So you got it right first.
Well,
In fact, it's probably gotten worse. Yeah, like I said. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, it's got bigger. Yeah, I bought trucks and a whole heap of things that barges and pyrolysis plants and all sorts of things that we yet to prove, essentially.
Excellent.
So, but the concept is still exactly the same. And despite everything that's happened in the interim, it still all is exactly the same. In fact, as you say, Polly, it's even got worse.
Yep. I would agree.
The problem is magnanimous and exponential, and if we don't do something soon between us, things aren't looking good for sure.
Yep. All right. So we've got 14 online so far. I think once we hit 20, or 5 past 5, we'll kick things off. But just letting people. One of the things with this particular time of starting is people are sometimes finishing one part of their life and moving into their other part of their life. So 5 o'clock through till 7 o'clock can be a bit of a difficult time to get people in, but they're starting to arrive.
Stephen, you normally have in-person ones as well too, don't you?
Absolutely. The next one's on the 26th of July out at the Agtech and Logistics Hub.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll give those details at the end of the session.
Okay.
Indeed. I guess the difference is the one part of your life to the other part of your life. This is all mine. Wholly and solely.
Well, and that's not unlike our I guess one of our target audiences is the farmer. The farmer,
Yeah.
I never ever say to a farmer, have a great weekend, because sometimes they just don't know what a weekend is.
Indeed. 5 o'clock knockoff time is knockoff time, I beg your pardon?
Yeah.
What was that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we've got a question from JF, who I met recently. JF, yeah, if you put your question into, I guess, the chat or Q&A. We'll take your question there. Okay, we're actually hitting 5 past, and we've got 16 of our people here in the room. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge our traditional custodians. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this event is being broadcast from, the Jarawai and Gayabal peoples, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. I would also like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are tuning in this evening. So welcome everyone to this webinar on inorganic waste and the Open Innovation Challenge that the Agtech and Logistics Hub is targeting on Open Innovation number 2. So tonight I'm joined by Owen Williams from the Agtech and Logistics Hub. Welcome, Owen. Polly Bury from USQ and the No Waste Project, and Connor Clark from Plastic Pirates. So yeah, I think one of the things around the waste project, Owen, if I'm correct, is when we first looked at this Open Innovation Challenge, we were looking at do we go for food waste? Do we go for inorganic waste? How did we come about the how did you come about going for the inorganic waste challenge that our farmers are facing at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Great question, because you're right. We did, as you know, through the process, a bit of backwards and forwarding. And like everything, though, we are industry-led. So we went back to our industry and spoke to them. And we spoke to the researchers that were involved. And we looked at where proportionally a lot of the research was being done. And I think Polly and others will probably state that a lot of it's being done in organic food waste, with a number of companies and departments starting to come into inorganic waste. So USQ being one. There was certainly a lot of work coming in from the CSIRO. DAF had some projects, Department of Environmental and Science had some. But what we wanted to do was actually start to shed a light on this and make sure we got some commercial outcomes for the growers. So it was one that certainly when I was talking to Costas and a few other groups, they were really paramount in trying to get some actual commercialisation in this space.
Yeah, thanks, mate. All right, so we'll kick things off with our first speaker for tonight, Polly Bury from USQ's No Waste Precinct. Polly, tell us a little bit about your project.
Okay, sure. I've got some slides up in a moment,
Yep.
but I'll do a real quick thing and then we'll jump straight in. So the No Waste Project is an actual acronym, and I'll show you what it means once the slides are up. But it came about because we had a bit of consortium of different organisations who were very interested in working towards no waste, which is that any material that is generated from a process or the end of a supply chain or so on, had an end of life pathway already planned, and then making sure that all the players that are needed for that are on board with that. So I will actually start sharing my slides so I can explain a little bit more about what it's about. So just checking, first of all, I know we did the check, but can you guys see my slides there?
Just starting to come up there, Polly.
Yeah. And I'll just go to full screen as well.
Yep.
Okay, let me know when you can see them.
Yep, you're all up.
Okay, excellent. So the No Waste Pilot Precinct actually sits under a research team at the university called Sustainable Industry Design. This one was established at the beginning of this year, actually, because we had two large funded projects commence in the last 6 months or so. One of them that I'm actually going to talk about today is the No Waste Project. And we've got one starting in the second half of the year, which is called the Simple Project, which I'll mention in a moment. So as to where the projects are hosted, we're part of the Centre for Future Materials at the university, which sits in the Institute for Advanced Engineering and Space Sciences. And some of you may know some of the other centres that sit under there as well. So the Centre for Agricultural Engineering also sits under this institute, and also the Centre for Hypersonics. So some of you may or may not have seen some of the activity going on regarding space research as well. So Stephen's introduced me. I'm Polly Bury. I am one of the associate professors at the university. I straddle a couple of areas, which is kind of how this project started. So I'll explain a little bit more when I get to the expertise slide, but by background, I'm a chemical materials engineer. But for about 20 years, I've worked with the food industries. I actually started out in the materials industry, so plastics, timber and steel, and I'm starting to come a little bit more full circle back into that area. I'm just popping this email address up here if anyone wants to find out more about the project later on, because I've got limited time, and there's a bit of a link there to the research of the team. So in terms of the research that sits under the team, a lot of the stuff in no waste, and I'll probably focus on the bits that might be of interest to people here today. We do focus on what do we do with material at the end of its life, and we look at a range of things. So currently the No Waste project focuses on the more immediate issues, so plastics, so all kinds of plastics, not just specific ones. So we have a few different polymers, as our chemists like to call them, that we focus on. And then part of that is thinking about, well, what actually is it that we can do with those? So what is the product that you might make with some of these things which currently don't have a pathway? So thinking of your single use type ones, which people haven't put thought into. And I think most people know the statistic that only about, maybe 10, 12% of the plastic waste that is generated in Australia actually currently has a planned pathway. And of course, we need to fix that. So a lot of it is in there. Linking to that, we also need to think about, if we've got this material and we think we've got something we can make with it, what does the supply chain look like and what is needed to make sure that that happens? And then we've got the 3 other areas of the project. So one of them is modeling where materials can go and what's the most viable or easy pathway to start with, and where can we go to make sure that we're using everything in an appropriate way and it's not just going to landfill and creating a problem in the future. And then we have, well, what are the workforces that are needed? And probably the biggest thing, which is, I think, why I took up this invite, is we need to co-design together how we're actually going to deal with these waste problems. So those are the 5 areas that are embedded in the Sustainable Industry Design team. We've got a focus there on, what infrastructure, what machines we might need, and what markets we might need to access. And the other interesting thing, with my experience anyway, straddling a few different industries, is sometimes the waste material from one industry is useful to be put in towards a product in another industry. And then sometimes we might have what's called closed loop as well, which I'll talk about in a moment. So some of the projects that we do have embedded under there, I've got a bit of a list. The one that I'm going to focus on today for you guys is the No Waste project, because if anyone is interested, that's the more immediate one that we can have people come in and chat with us and think about how we can support the work that you're doing, and vice versa. So No Waste, I mentioned a moment ago, is an acronym. Probably that's my greatest contribution. I'm joking. But my contribution was the acronym, which was New Options for Waste and Saving the Environment. And the reason we came up with that, because if we just use the acronym, that actually represents what the project is about. We do have some others. So one of our researchers is an Advance Queensland project where he's looking at railway sleeper infrastructure using waste materials. And there's been some really promising results in field trials. And then the new project, which if I've got a minute at the end, will briefly introduce, which is the Simple Hub. And that's got a bit more of moving from a design focus to an actual manufacturing process, looking at small scale mobile manufacturing and various other aspects as well. Now, in terms of the types of researchers that we have involved in these projects, we're not just focused in the science and the engineering areas. We do have business and education and various other areas involved as well. Now, if anyone wants to ask questions during this, please feel welcome to drop them in there. I can answer typed ones a little bit later on. So what's the No Waste project about? We actually did a presentation at the Composites Conference recently in Toowoomba, and we said, well, what actually do we do? One of the technical goals is actually, well, if we start putting things together, what are the things that we can make that actually become in some ways viable in a few different ways? So environmentally viable, socially viable, technically viable, and financially viable is often one of the drivers for organizations. So that can be one of the hurdles, which I'm not fond of, but them's the breaks. So a lot of you might have seen things like the circular economy models. We focus on using the waste hierarchy, which is what some of you may have seen before, which is reuse is probably the best pathway to go for. So if you've got something designed for reuse, there's less resource hopefully going towards that. One classic example might be, and I grew up in New Zealand, but we used to have glass milk bottles. We would put them out when we had finished with them out on the street. The milkie would come along and collect them up. They would get washed, sterilised, reused. So the resourcing for that is a little bit less than if you're full on going to recycle it, so melt it down and make new bottles. So that's one example. The other one is repair. So you design your things to be repaired. Now, this may not apply to something like a plastic bag because the price of it is so cheap that people don't always see the value. So we've got to think of another way that we can use things like that. And that's when we start getting into the realm of remanufacture. So are we going to turn this into something else different from its original purpose? And soft plastics can be a real problem to turn back into soft plastics. So some of the times we think about, well, remanufacture might be the best thing. And then one of the loops also recycling. So hopefully a lot of people have been taking part in the bottle recycling schemes that have been introduced in Queensland in the last couple of years or so. And that covers our PET bottles and our glass bottles and so on. So that's the modelling focus. We tie into there, what might it cost to, logistically do things? What might it cost in terms of capital infrastructure that's needed? And what is, I guess, the social cost or effort that people have to make to get material to where it needs to go? So that's probably the core part of what we are aiming to do. Behind that, there's a whole lot of engineering and design that goes on in the team. So product design plays a big part, and there is actually some slightly commercial outcomes that are already existing via one of our industry partners, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then probably the other thing to think about, some of the applications you might have seen, plastics can be used in roads or posts or various other things. But those kinds of things actually have standards associated with them, and they have been used for particular materials, not necessarily plastics. So if you look up the specs or the standards for a street sign, a street post, for example, they might say it needs to be a zinc galv type of metal. But no one's thought about, if you make it from compressed waste plastic, what might that actually look like? So physical performance might be the same, but the standard doesn't allow currently for a different material to be used. So another thing with trying to make new products with waste materials, or what's considered waste at the moment, is what are the standards that might be required for some of those? And then lastly, and I'm going to focus on this bit here in the middle that has this little Talon logo. So one of our industry partners is Talon. The CEO there has a background in carbon fiber composites and other composites as well, but he's very passionate about this problem of plastic waste in particular. And so one of the hurdles sometimes when you get a plastic stream, particularly in a residential collection where everything gets chucked in the yellow lid bin, you end up with a whole lot of mixed plastics. And then at the other end, they may need to be separated out again into the different streams. But he's saying, well, hey, if we leave some of it as just a mixture, what kind of things can you make? And I've actually got some props behind me, but I've got a background, so they may not show up. So Jeff down at Talon has actually got a project going on with Country Road at the moment, which is using their waste plastics and their waste fabric to make products that they can sell in their stores. So that's an example of the waste material that might be generated through an organisation actually being used to create a product that is sold by that organisation as well. And so that's some of the sorts of things that initially are coming out of this as well. Now, I'm going to mention the partners. So we've got a very passionate team of representatives across the organisations. So we do have Grand Central on board, originally through their operations manager, particularly focusing on things that currently don't have a local pathway. So wax cardboard's a bit problematic. Some of the soft plastic work, black plastic in particular, we've been working with, and various other things. Polystyrene. So on farm, you guys may be aware that probably on the way there might be a polystyrene ban for particular applications, and the ban being focused on single-use polystyrene. That does not mean that polystyrene is gone altogether, though. because some of you may be aware that polystyrene also gets used in building applications, which means they're a longer term application, not a, use it once, chuck it or whatever. And so that's been a focus as well. And we've got a really neat project coming up. We're using the waste polystyrene in an advanced application, which I may or may not get to talk about just yet. So the rest of the partners here, we've got a training centre. So for those of you who might be thinking about ideas on how to deal with waste materials on farm, plastics in particular, and rubbers, then you can head on down to Partech and have a chat to them as well. They're really great with that sort of thing. And then, of course, we do have Wagner's involved with an end application, and EnviroSand focusing on glass. So if you guys have any glass waste. And then we've got organisations from Lend-Lease onwards helping out with developing standards, getting characteristics of waste streams from a regional scale to a city scale. And we do have some smaller councils coming on board in our newer project as well. Probably the last place, and I'm hoping the other speakers may appreciate this as well, the next generation coming up behind us is still going to have quite a bit of waste problem to deal with. So part of the No Waste project, we do actually have an education stream where we have year 4 to year 10 students come on campus and learn about and think about the ways in which they can deal with certain waste materials. We actually have one activity tomorrow. We'll have about 80 or 90 kids on campus. We will be focusing on glass because this year, National Science Week, the focus is on glass and the sorts of things that could be done and the challenges that are involved as well. So just tell me if I'm running out of time, Stephen. So in terms of the core team and expertise, we have quite a mixture. We do have a whole host of engineers, myself being one, my co-lead Tristan Shelley as well. We've got more of a chemical materials background. With Tristan, it's more of aerospace. I've been a little bit more food and packaging. We do have Sensitech as part of this to feed into manufacturing in the form of Zara, who's there, and energy, so electrical, and particularly if you want portable energy is some of the things that we're focusing on in a regional context. So Andreas. We do have our 2 junior researchers who just started a little while ago. So Jessica has a mathematical modelling expertise, which she's putting towards the modelling work. So figuring out the numbers and the economics and various other things as well. And Matt down the bottom right as well, he's got a chemistry background. So understanding how and why things work in some of the processes that we're doing. And also actually using what we currently think of as single-use plastics to make some advanced high-value things as well, so that it becomes worth doing something about the problem in some instances. And we do have construction and civil. Steph, actually, for those of you, if you want to field test an idea, Steph looks after the makerspace at the university. So there you can have access to things like 3D printers, 3D scanners. We do have capability to try out some thermal processing for plastics in particular as well. And within our laboratories and teams, we do also have some sort of small scale microprocessing that we're actually getting in place as well. In particular. So if people are interested in those kinds of things, then come along and chat. Probably one of the really big things, and I will mention this near the end, we do have a workshop series associated with the project. The first of the workshops will actually start in September, and we'll have 2 more, probably October and November, and then that will carry on through. So the No Waste project actually spans about 2 or 3 years. So we will be running this for a little while yet. We've only 6 months in at the moment. So No Waste goals, we want to get people working together to work on solving this problem of waste materials and making sure they're not waste anymore. We will have some demonstrator projects. We have some already. And then we've got one particular goal in mind that will be visible a bit more near the end of the year. Probably if people are interested in the educational suite, I'll talk about a little bit more. And local microprocessing capabilities. So we are working together with our partners about housing a facility somewhere in the Toowoomba area where people can come by and potentially have access to equipment and capability to create products. And like I said, plastics has been a bit of a big focus initially. So that's the goals, the partners, etc. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but basically this is about having all the right players in place. So do we have industry on board? Do we have educational and design on board? Do we have local governance on board? Do we have the public, especially with making sure materials get to the right place? That's a big thing. And to help us out to try and guide us a little bit, we do have CSIRO on our advisory board. We do have Waste Management Resource Recovery Association represented on our board, as well as a few other organisations too, particularly focusing on commercialisation in one area, which hopefully would be of help for some people. But really what this diagram is saying is let's share the knowledge and the know-how that can help solve this problem. And then of course with industry, there may be some commercial interests. So for the IP stuff that might be sequestered away for particular things. But for dealing with high volume, let's share what we know and what works. Again, I'm not sure we want to dwell onto this too much, but for those of you thinking about solving the problem of waste, need to bear in mind some things. So what does it cost to make it? How far does it travel? Because that ties into cost. Does anyone value what it is that you want to make? Do they actually want it? And then from us, from our side, we do the maths of, the material flows, the energy flows, the costs involved, etc., and so on. And our outputs are hoping that we are doing some of these good things here for the environment. So the one thing to remember in a regional area, that the size of the problem and the solutions to the problem can be quite different to if you're dealing in a metropolitan scale. They can build big factories and so on. That's fine. What size do we actually need for an on-farm problem or for a regional problem? And that's definitely one thing that we focus on with the microprocessing and mobile processing as well. So I've already gone through that diagram, but one thing that we have really focused on is missing connections. So if you guys are out there tackling this challenge for inorganic materials, what are the connections you need to make sure that that material ends up to a user? And that's one thing that we do focus on, and what needs to be put in place for that to happen. And that ties into the need for co-design. And what do the people who are going to assist with getting that off the ground, what do they actually need to know? So that's some of the things there. One thing, and I might finish maybe shortly after this. One thing is that recyclability can be tied to, do you actually have access to the infrastructure to recycle something? So if you're out west, the infrastructure may exist closer to here, and that can be a bit of a problem. And so something that's labeled on the packaging as recyclable may suddenly become considered not recyclable because a lot of the population in that particular area can't actually access a pathway to recycle something. So that can be a bit of a hurdle. And so some things we look at: logistics, consumer handling and what they need to do, infrastructure and putting it where it's needed, and scale down tech, so the microprocessing and so on. So education suite, I think I'm going to finish up with it there, Stephen, if I'm just looking at timing. So I've already mentioned the primary, secondary, but vocational. So people wanted to learn how to properly operate equipment and recycle materials and so on. We have a program under the No Waste Precinct, and then the workshop series. So ideas on how to move forward from an idea to an actual product and pathway, and hopefully an organisation. So I'll leave it there, Stephen, actually, in terms of what we do.
Thanks, Holly. And that was very comprehensive, and we appreciate your input on that. Have you had an opportunity to have a look at what they're doing with the circular economy in Bega?
In Bega, yes. So I actually I do have a contact down there in Bega, and I'm trying to remember the area. It's further further south. But Cass Budd is the person that I deal with mostly there. So
Yeah.
with the No Waste project, I had actually raised this with her and opportunities as well.
There's a really good case study out of that region for how an entire community
Yep.
and builds around a circular economy.
Yep. And that's precisely the sorts of things that we want to see happening more.
In regional centres.
Yeah.
So I guess nobody understands regional more than Connor and what he's trying to achieve in some of the most far-flung places on the globe. And I'd like to ask Connor if you can, I guess, give us your presentation around the plastic pirates, and also to our audience, please put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll be addressing those during the Q&A session at the end after Owen and Connor have spoken. So yeah, please put your questions in the Q&A section down the bottom of the screen, and we'll get those answered for you. So yeah, good evening, Connor, and welcome. Love to hear your story.
Good evening, everybody. I hope all the pirates are well and good. Polly, thank you for your presentation. I'm not sure how many of those boxes of yours that we tick. I'd say a lot of them indeed. So I guess first and foremost, really what we're about is creating solutions and finding solutions with plastic. Agricultural sector is right up there on the list of plastic consumers, and the sort of pathways, I guess, that agriculture has for the plastic that they use is fairly limited in terms of landfill being the option, or other means to dispose of them, which we won't mention. However, what we're about is to prove the concept of a mobile and scalable pyrolysis unit, which is able to produce usable fuels from the back of the machine on site at give or take a ton a day of plastic to almost a ton of fuels produced. So it's a proof of concept. Indeed, it is the first in the world like it that will produce a usable fuel from the back of the machine on site. So a mobile pyrolysis plant. There isn't really anything to go on in terms of precedents set or options available to prove this point. The plant that we're about to receive will be the first in the world to operate in its intended environment. So by all intents and purposes, it is a proof of concept, and it does need to be proved. To do that, we need support from people that do have their vision in mind to try and create a circular economy out of something that is pretty much linear at this stage. We want to use the power of pyrolysis to turn plastic into treasure, being Plastics Pirate. We're the first to market in Australia with this sort of plant, first to market in the world, in fact, with this sort of plant. And again, our point of difference is that we can produce usable fuels, including diesel, unleaded, and liquid hydrocarbons in the form of naphtha fuel to manufacture plastic from the plant itself. This obviously reduces the amount of fuels that are needed to transport voluminous plastic around the country to massive plants that produce a fuel that needs further refinement in order to use it as a viable source of fuels. Initially, our concept was to provide the, I'll just go through our technology first, actually. Thanks, Owen. I'm new to this, everyone, in case you haven't worked that out. So pyrolysis is indeed a global technology that's been proven time and time again. It's just Australia, the application of pyrolysis in Australia in terms of a 10-ton, 25-ton a day plants are rather limited in our geography. We've got 4 people to 50,000 kilometers, as opposed to other countries that have 50,000 people to 4 kilometers of space. So this technology is really advantageous to the Australian geography in particular. these plants are able to transform at the moment 40 kilograms of plastic at a time in a batch fed system, which produces almost 40 litres of usable fuels. It's documented that through a continuous feed system, which we have new to the system, obviously increases its efficiency and output. We need to prove that on a banana farm, funnily enough. That's agriculture, right? So at this stage, we're looking at proving the technology in far north Queensland. It allows us manageable amounts of usable plastic that we can use in our proof of concept. What we need to prove the relationship of the feedstock to the offtake, and we need to prove the application of a mobile application by land and a mobile application by sea. We're not only concerned with the agricultural industry. There's a lot of industries that all use plastic, and at the moment it's a linear economy in it all. So we aim to prove that we can A, prove what feedstock makes what type of fuel, B, that it's a mobile application by land on trucks and with a land-based service, and C, with ghost nets and marine debris that is close to my heart in particular, where we'll operate off this landing barge that I'm currently sitting on, and prove the mobile application of this technology. So to bring it back to the proof of concept, we have a mobile permit available, which is 28 days in duration per site. Our first site will be at Lakeland Transfer Station in the Cook Shire, which is very, very far north. For those that don't know where it is, it's 350 kilometres north of Cairns. There we aim to prove the relationship of the feedstock to the offtake, having granulated a number of different industries' plastics, and look to put 50 kilogram lots through and obtaining a fuel sample which goes to CSIRO in the first instance until we've proven a likely fuel, and then it goes to petrochemical companies to get the actual validation of what fuel this particular plastic will make with the settings on this particular machine. Once we've proven that, we aim to put the plant on a truck and take it north and south and east and west in order to prove that the application is suitable for your farm where it is. For example, there's 1% of the banana grows, which is a $500 million industry in Australia, that sends 30 tons of plastic to landfill per month. That's a ton a day, which normally would go to landfill. We're aiming to prove that we can transform that into a ton of usable fuel on site for these banana farmers. And that's just the banana industry. Looking at a linear economy of a plastic to fuel being a viable option for most industries doesn't really solve the circular economy problem. This technology, we're pretty confident that it can turn plastics into usable fuels, i.e. liquid hydrocarbons and naphtha type fuels, to make plastic out of plastic. So why do we need to get banana bags imported from Vietnam because it's so cheap when we can do it on site at the farm or at a centralized location? Honestly, I don't really see that this has many hurdles to it at all, apart from the hurdles that everyone encounters all the time when we're dealing with our competitors like fossil fuel companies, waste management, and government. It's very difficult to get those three across the line, but once we've proven the tech and we have the results in hand, which we will by the end of the year, I find it really difficult for governance and competitors to have much to say that isn't in support of what we're trying to do. Much more than that, I can't really say, apart from the fact that we have a scalable option and vision in sight. We are the exclusive distributors of these machines in Australia. At the moment, we're able to have 5 machines in the first year only because of the scale that Scarab Tech, our manufacturer partners, have at their fingertips. The second year, we're looking at 20 plants, then 30, then 40, then 50, to give us a total over a 5-year period of 145 plants. Each plant can produce 150,000 litres of usable fuel per year. We're looking to, as exclusive distributors, obviously to scale ourselves as taking a 20% off the top, which will provide the funds for our not-for-profit, which actually provides safe water and holistic health to remote communities, funded by the plastic that is turned into a circular economy or usable fuels in Australia. I don't know. I guess in some ways there's a lot of advice that we need, and there's a lot of we're new to the whole business world. We're looking for partners that would understand the infancy that we are in, but also look to find partners that see a big vision that we can actually use plastic to make plastic. I'm not sure how many places around the world are able to introduce this into a circular economy. In my mind, I think an industry-specific circular economy is more a target, more so than a circular economy that bans around many, many different industries and players in the chain. I think that there is entirely a possibility to make plastic from plastic on site at location, which ticks a lot of your boxes, Polly. I think I hear exactly what you were saying, and honestly, I'm sitting there going, we tick this box, we tick this box, we tick this box. The box we don't tick is the fact that I'm new to business and I don't understand exactly the complexities around it all, but I'm open to challenges and I'm open to understanding and support of viable partners that see our same vision and are interested in proving the fact that we can make plastic from plastic. It's a fairly broad concept, and it's a concept that I think is bandied around a lot, but we're about to prove that. And I invite people to come and join us and give it a go, because what have you got to lose? It's 300 grand for a plant, really. Like, seriously.
So that answers one of the questions, Connor, that we've had from the audience is how much is it for a plant? That's good. Is that your last slide, Connor?
It is. In saying that it's 300 grand a plant, steel prices are rising daily. Shipping is being more complicated by the day. I'm looking to secure all 5 plants today, or as soon as we possibly can. Looking to manufacturing the plants here in Australia. Obviously, I need support to do that. I understand the complexities around supply and demand. As exclusive distributors of the plants, we're looking for around $1 million over 5 years, whereby we will install, service, and commission the plants and operate them for individual circumstances over the 5-year period. The plants have a service life of between 10 and 15 years, so there's a lot of investigation and things that need to be had around that. But that's where we're at the moment, Stephen, absolutely.
Thanks, Connor. Knowing who's in the audience, there's some very high-tech manufacturers. So I think I heard you say that your scale at the moment is restricted by your partner's manufacturing capability.
Indeed.
Are you open to other manufacturers coming on board to assist you with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And so is Scarab Tech. They understand the complexities that they weren't. In fact, they weren't ready for me, Stephen. I approached them to inquire as to how I can get a plant to provide safe water and health to remote communities by turning plastic into fuel to power this barge. They came back to me saying, would you consider being a joint venture to accelerate our commercialization, because we'll get their 5th plant they've ever produced. Plastic Odyssey is a French ship that has a 3-year circumnavigation plan. They got their first plant, but we get their first plant that we're actually going to commercialize. And so most definitely they're on the table with manufacture wherever it needs to be. Is Australia in fact the place that is most viable to produce a plant? We send all our iron ore offshore. Go figure. I think there's definitely room for manufacture in maybe not Australia, but certainly closer to home than shipping, which is an incredible frustration that I'm undergoing at the moment as we speak over this interview to try and get shipping happening to get our single plant here.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in the supply chain issues that currently exist out there, Connor.
No.
And we're not here to solve the supply chain issues at the moment. We're here to solve the waste issues that we're all facing. We've got more questions for you, Connor, so don't go away. I'd like to hand over to Owen now. Owen's going to give us a bit of an introduction to the Open Innovation Challenge. We've heard from USQ, the institutions that are looking at the problem. We've heard from Connor at Plastic Pirate, an innovator that's looking at the problem. So now we're about to hear from Owen Williams from the Agtech and Logistics Hub and what the Open Innovation Challenge is and the details around that. Thanks, Owen.
Thanks, Steve. And yeah, thanks, Polly. Thanks, Connor. 2 fantastic talks, really showing how research and commercialization and proof of concepts all come together. So I really enjoyed both of those talks. So thanks very much for you taking the time. And obviously, by the looks of it, more questions to be fielded. I'm going to be very quick here. I'm really, the background of my experience with plastics was, as we said right at the start, we were really industry focused at the Hub, and we look at the challenges being faced by anyone in the industry of agriculture. So we talk to the growers on a regular basis. We formed a wicked wall of challenges, and this one here started to actually escalate. And what we noticed was we had digital connectivity at the Hub. We've connected over 1,300 sites now. So we don't see the digital connectivity being as big an issue. It's more about getting the solutions scaled out. But what we did notice was 2 particular challenges rising up the ranks with the amount of interest. One being labour, and obviously through COVID, it became very clear that we're looking at automation, and we'll, in the next meetup, we'll be talking about AI and automation and those sorts of things. And I think it's quite topical because we are seeing a lot of that being looked at. But the other one that was streaked up to the top was waste, organic and inorganic waste. And it's become such a big issue that you start to see it in a lot of corporate growers' strategic plans, and you're starting to see it in Coles and Woolworths being a big focus for them and their suppliers, driven primarily by producers and ESG concerns. But we're starting to see waste really become a huge issue. As I said right at the start, we looked at both inorganic and organic waste. But in the end, we chose to go down the inorganic waste stream because we thought there was a lot more emphasis required on that particular area. And there was some scalable stuff that was struggling to get commercialized. So we wanted to really put a spotlight on that to help growers with what they said was becoming a plastic pandemic. So for us, we wanted to have a bit of a look at it. So we wanted to look at how to reduce, remove, or recycle. And it was plastics and inorganic wastes. Obviously, plastics being the major component. The Open Innovation was set out. So the Open Innovation Challenge framework, for those that aren't aware of it, is we actually get to an Open Innovation Challenge by articulating, using feedback from industry, researchers, USQ, people like the government, DES, Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, and we use all that feedback to articulate this one challenge, which I'll go through in a sec, to make sure we've got real clarity on what we're trying to solve. Then we look internally within the hub and externally using the greater ecosystem that we've built up, and we actually start to percolate and work through these ideas so we can actually collect and assess a heap of ideas that come out of this ecosystem that we've built. Once we've collected and assessed it, we go through the assessment panel. We'll get people like Polly involved, who comes from that real great framework that she presented earlier on today. We'll start to validate some of the actual chosen ones that we want to go forth with. We'll test it and then bring a proof of concept to market. And that's the actual framework that we're going to actually work with open innovation. But the idea of getting that proof of concept is then you're actually ready to scale and start to go commercial. But through all that, we know that by the time we get to proof of concept, it's looked at commercially, it's looked at how it fits with the industry, and that's really important that we have that industry connection all the way through. For us, the expression of interest is still open and it's ongoing. You can go through to that website there and of our Agtech and Logistics Hub, and you'll find the Open Innovation Challenge there. The call out to innovators is that the Agtech and Logistics Hub is looking for innovators to reduce the amount of inorganic waste used in horticulture in 3 areas. The first area is innovative solutions to avoid, replace, treat, or reduce any inorganic waste inputs. We then wanted to put a real spotlight on plastics, so we put a reduction of single-use plastics with a competitive recycle product across production and supply chain. And then, as both the speakers talked about before, is look at the solutions that can turn inorganic waste into a valuable and profitable resource, creating options for a circular economy in horticulture and the regions they reside in. The key dates for this process is that the 1st of June, the application's open. So I think we're the 20th or 21st today. And I'll go through some numbers that we've actually already had expressions of interest in. And at the end of June, 1st of July, the applications will close. We'll then go through a process of looking at the assessments and the offers. So sticking to that framework we talked about. And then we'll actually, in August, start to look through all the testing and validation with the end of a showcase to wrap it all up. Our Open Innovation Program ends with that showcase, and it's really important that we do that because we've got growers, as you'll see in a little while, that want to come along and have a look at this. And coming from a grower background, a farming background, I know the best validation sometimes in my own mind for adoption is really touch, feel, and see it. So it's important that we have that showcase right at the end. The solutions that have the best potential are invited to present at the challenge stakeholders. And really the stakeholders that are included are producers, really important, other industry participants, so it might be Hort Innovation or Growcom, or we've got export companies that are really interested in using sustainable packaging, those sorts of things. Associates and research organisations, because throughout that Open Innovation Program, we get a lot of spin-offs. And then it needs further research, and we need more research to actually bring on other solutions. Government's always interested in, I must say, in this particular challenge that we've chosen this time, the government have been extremely supportive and extremely connecting with all their departments. EPA, Department of Environmental and Science, Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, Department of Innovation. So we've got a lot of those areas being connected in, and it's really helpful to have the government involved in this particular one. And then we also have our own stakeholders within the actual Agtech and Logistics Hub. So the stakeholders have a lot there, and it's also really good for the innovators to understand they'll get to present to all of those people. So we're seeking submissions from all innovators across all sectors and industries. And one of the things I thought we would see a lot of, and we certainly have seen a lot of, is we'd see irrigation as probably one of the major focuses. But ultimately, in the end, we're seeing a lot around packaging, mulching, weed control, those sorts of areas. So there's a lot of other areas that have come out based off our assumptions that we weren't expecting to see so much interest in. So it's been good for the innovators to see, but it's also been great for the growers who've said, I've actually got a real problem with that. Even right down to the plastic tag they put on to send to Woolworths. So we're really looking forward to these dates rolling through. As I said, we're halfway through the expressions of interest, and we're really looking forward to getting into that end of June and hitting July with that assessments. The benefits of joining the challenge, it's just got access to the Agtech and Logistics Hub. We've got an ecosystem well over 7,500 people now, and we're looking to bring that in there and make sure that we actually do support the people that actually get in behind that, whether it be an investor, whether it be an industry person. Is it just to give you some mentoring to get you ready for investment support, and the opportunities to profile and promote your innovation locally and nationally. And now we've probably just shown in our socials, we're starting to reach internationally with people like countries like India and Japan to come along. So we've got international reach as well as national reach as well as local reach, and they're all starting to really hone in on these challenges that we're starting to put out there. We also have a support program there for an accelerator if required, and people like Connor just explained, great concept. Actually doing a lot of work with industries. He mentioned the banana industry, he mentioned the regional councils up at Cooks and all that. But one of the things that you find with smart innovators that want to take a challenge on, like Connor, is that they generally need some business mentoring. So I know locally within the Toowoomba community, we've had a lot of legal and accountants and that reach out to be innovators support basis, and we're really appreciative of that at the Hub. And we do put the accelerator program on to help them get through that real intensive sprint to bring them up to speed quickly on their proof of concept. To date, we've got 32 innovators express interest. So that's over one a day that's been putting an application in. We've got 13 researchers that express interest in being involved. We've got 16 agribusinesses, so commercial agribusinesses, and we'll mention a few later on. We've got the Department of Environmental and Science getting involved and being a critical person joining the panel, giving us optics. We've had a close confidence with Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. It's been great to explore other parts of the government support, being Department of Environmental and Science. And importantly, we've got, I looked at it this morning, it's over 118 now, we're up to 132 growers express interest in the outcomes. So that's really important as well, because ultimately in the end, if the growers are expressing interest in the outcomes, you know you've got a real challenge that they want to work towards. And these growers range from corporates right through to the family produce, because everyone in this sector is going to get affected by it with the way they sell their produce going forward. The acknowledgements, I just want to shout out our partners always at the Hub have been amazing at Queensland Government. The TSBE Group, again, Steve and his crew have been so supportive in putting on functions like this, advertising it, pushing the message. University of Southern Queensland, Polly, thank you again for your talk. It's been fantastic to have University of Southern Queensland on board. The UQ, which has also got the Coffee Alliance with the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. We've seen some more research come out of there on some innovative fashions. And the FKG Group with some of the things that we're looking at to build and infrastructure that have been giving us great support in and around that. The Queensland Government, Department of Environmental Science are a key person helping us get the optics right to make sure that what we actually said was going to be good is going to be good. Costas gave a huge amount of feedback. Jesse Reeder in particular from Costa gave me a fair bit of feedback into the actual program and actually explained and put numbers around what it meant for them right as a business. And as one of the largest businesses, once you see what they're challenged with and what they're actually putting out publicly that they're going to solve, it was great to see. Netafim, Aaron Edmonds showed me the program they're running. With their dripper tapes and all that, and I'm going to ask Netafim to put that up publicly soon, because it looks like an amazing program, and it looks like it's going to address a lot of the issues. And then we have ongoing support from the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, so thanks very much for that. Quite simply, if you want to get involved, go to the website, you'll find the Open Innovation tab there, or feel free to reach out to myself directly, and I'll be more than happy to direct you in the right direction. Thanks very much. And Steve, I'll hand back to yourself and let some of those questions flow, particularly for Polly and for Connor.
No worries. I'll ask all of our panelists to unmute themselves, please. And we'll open up the discussion. This is probably the second Zoom I've ever run, so my apologies. I know a lot of people like to have chats going on the side and all that sort of stuff. But when this was set up for me, it didn't allow for the chat. So we will keep that in mind for next time we run an event like this. However, I've just discovered whilst Owen was talking that I can actually give our guests an opportunity to speak. So if you don't want to type out your entire question, throw your hand up and I'll see if I can open up the mic for you to talk. Just make sure you've got your mic set up to speak, or your computer or device, whatever you're using to speak. Throw your hand up and I can try and give you the opportunity to ask your question directly to our panelists. So the first question we have is directed at Connor. Connor, in relation to certification, has the fuel storage been looked at by a hazardous area auditor for electrical compliance and safety?
You're on mute there, mate.
You're on mute. Connor, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Rookie error.
There we go. Yeah, excuse me, I got a puppy getting on me as well.
Yeah.
Electrical compliance for fuel. We have bunding and fuel supply and storage mitigation strategies, I guess, in terms of currently what we're going to be using is IBCs to store the fuel. But pretty much at this stage, it'll be 25-litre containers that'll be going to CSIRO and then to petrochemical companies to validate the fuel. I guess in answer to that question, it would probably be related more to the industry and area that we're looking to install the plants in as to what fuel compliance and storage they need to adhere to.
It looks like Robert's put his hand up, so I'll see if I can get this stuff to, he might want to expand upon his question.
Sure.
Hey,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, we got it working. Yeah, basically, Connor, if your piece of equipment is hooked up to the electricity grid in Queensland and you've got flammable liquids, your naphthas and your ULPs, it's got to be checked.
It's hooked up to a generator. It's remote operation.
No, okay, you might get away with it, but
Thanks.
be aware that there is a distinct possibility it could go bang as well.
Indeed, there is. It operates at less than a bar of pressure.
It's not that. It's the fumes create a vapor cloud.
There are no fumes. It's the fuel that will be diverting most of the fuels back into the burner as a heating source to keep it at 500 degrees, and the rest goes through a scrubber and is flared off, and it's all operated with generator power, 240 generators.
Yeah, your instrumentation needs to be certified. Your burner needs to be certified as well.
Thanks. Yep.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, no, that's excellent. And yeah, happy to hook you two up after the session if you want to continue that conversation. All right, the next question is from Julie Cotter. Julie's asked, can the fuels produced be used to replace applications where gas is used for drying? That's for you, Connor, again.
Where the gas is used for drying of plastics, of feedstocks. Sorry, I'm not quite sure of the question there.
Okay, Julie's put her hand up and I've given her access to speak.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, kind of what I'm thinking of drying is nuts in their shells. So we have huge sheds full of containers of nuts that we dry using gas at about 40 degrees. So just when I listened to you, I thought of fuels in terms of diesel and those sorts of oils. But does it also, would it lend itself to being able to be used in the drying sheds, for example, do you think?
Julie, I'm absolutely confident that it can be. I think the application for the waste gases that we produce that aren't condensed into fuels have a large market that is untapped in terms of its application. Quite ironically, in fact, the innovation that Scarab Tech have in the pyrolysis technology, in fact, came from a farmer in a fairly remote area of South Africa that was using macadamia shells to power his and his neighbor's farm through his innovation of pyrolysis technology. So I would be incredibly encouraged by the fact that it was able to dry your nuts too.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Julie. And you've put yourself to mute. The final question we've got, and once again, I think this is directed at you, Connor. You've been unpopular here this evening. For the farms, how would it be economical to build your plant and use your plastic compared to importing the plastic?
Currently, I've been unable to determine why it is so cheap to import a banana bag from Vietnam as opposed to make it on your farm itself. I guess that's a point that expansion on our technology would uncover. But it takes 1 litre of fuel to produce 3 or 4 litres of usable fuel on site. So it's up to you how you get your fuel delivered to your farm and how you get your plastic delivered to your farm. In all honesty, I'm unsure as to how naphtha is turned into plastic nurdles in order to make a banana bag that is cheaper to supply from Vietnam than it is to supply on your farm. These are all sort of questions that need to be investigated, which is kind of one of the reasons for a partner in that space.
Okay, thanks, Connor. Are there any questions from the other panelists to the other panelists?
Yeah, Polly, I was speaking to a innovator today, but also a grower, a significant grower, and they're interested in, like, with regards to the obstacles of getting a lot of your work forward and into marketplace. What are the greatest obstacles as a researcher you face with regards to waste?
With regards to waste, so probably this is why we had the whole modelling component put in there in the first place as well. So we've actually used that as a tool to determine what technologies and what pathways actually make sense. And then probably from that point on, you realise, and Connor has got this going on, is you need capital infrastructure to actually make things happen at the next scale. So that's one of the hurdles that we face going from laboratory out to microprocessing and to larger scale. But we have addressed that a little bit with the funding mechanisms. One thing with the No Waste project is people can come in to the program, and we actually have students that can work on your proof of concept stuff. And I find for innovators, that's probably one of the first hurdles, actually validating their idea that it can actually work. I can see Connor nodding his head. And having the time and the resources probably can sometimes be a hurdle for innovators. But for us, and I would say we've spent a few years of it overcoming some of these hurdles, but getting the right players together. So with Connor's example, he's got, turned the plastic back into plastic to be used in the same sort of application. Sometimes that might not be a viable option for some people, depending on the infrastructure and the capabilities that they have close to home. So who are the other parties that they need to bring together to work on the problem? So I would say that was probably one of the biggest hurdles, making sure that the right parties are involved. And when you put up the challenge and you said you've got all these people vetting the challenge, yeah, that's probably one of the things that has really helped getting out there, speaking to people and listening to what they actually think. And then probably the biggest challenge is putting it all together. Once you've got, I would say we went through an incubator process early on. We talked to 100 or more entities at the time, and trying to put 100 different opinions together and information was probably one of the biggest challenges, but we've gotten pretty good at it.
Excellent. No worries.
Yeah. Connor, you got any questions for Polly?
Not off the top of my head. Lots of questions, absolutely, and I'd really like to touch base with you after this, Polly.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, at your convenience, but I'd certainly see that we've got a lot of common pathways, and really I just want to see plastic made from plastic at the end of the day. And it doesn't really matter how that eventuates, but we have to stop the problem, right?
Yeah.
And the only way that I see us stopping the problem is to make plastic out of plastic. Otherwise, we keep mining fossil fuel and we keep burning it and we keep making virgin plastic in a linear economy and nothing gets solved. So let's start small and let's start with people that are keen to try and to make that difference.
Yes.
And move from there. Yeah, that's what
Yeah, and I was really excited to see that there's like a portable advanced recycling, which is what you've got there. It's actually close.
Sure. If no one comes on board, at least I'm going to be able to power my barge and deliver safe water and health to remote communities. So, it's up to them if they want to play or not.
Yeah.
I think there's no secret, obviously, that Connor and his team have put in an expression of interest to be part of this open innovation. And when we already did the initial analysis, we could see a lot of interesting things being going on, but more so just also the regional communities of impact that you can make, the positive impacts you can make into these areas. And I think, Steve, for me, my final comment is these areas have a positive impact on the actual the growers, which is really important that we focus in on. And one of the important things I always like to point out, it's got to be competitive. It's a competitive world that the growers are in. And so we must find ways to keep finding ways to make this competitive. And we've got some great engineers, we've got some great innovators, and we've got some great researchers. But most importantly, outside of the grower point of view, is that the impacts that it can make on social impacts and regional impacts is huge. And we've got a couple of innovators that we'll shed the light on later on that are making really positive impacts in remote, regional, and actually urban communities. So by just doing this sort of process. So I think it's a new industry, it's a new front, but the wave is coming of pressure to make sure we do conform.
Yeah, fantastic. So last chance for questions from the audience. Throw your hand up if you've got a question, a quick question of any of our panelists. Owen, just confirming in my own mind, with the waste, are you also looking at, currently we're using tape for watering in horticulture. Are we looking at alternatives? So not just the dealing with the current waste, but alternatives to the waste producing things such as tape?
Yeah, we are. We're looking at biodegradables and those sorts of scenarios, which is a bit tricky when you think about it, but a plough-in tape, if you can think of that around your mind, is one that we're looking at the moment. But there's other things that we're looking at alternatively with regards to how do you deliver water, full stop. So the spin-offs that we start to look at can be wide and far. And there's some very innovative companies coming in from Israel right now with some alternatives in this place. One of them being a major irrigation company going, our time is limited. We have to innovate or else our industry will be dead. Yeah. And so they actually are looking at alternative ways of delivering water. So yeah, it's exciting. It's probably a bit more futuristic, and will it get to proof of concept in the timelines that we set? Absolutely, probably not. But what it will do is it allow the growers that have showed some interest an idea of what's actually, you don't know what you don't know. We keep saying that, but show them what's actually on the horizon so they can make longer term plans in and around that. Yeah,
it sounds like you're creating a great ecosystem of community around this challenge, this problem, and that's fantastic to see. And I think it's a role model for other challenges and other people to look at and become a part of. We often talk about the hub and spoke model of, we're only a part of the solution. There's going to be hubs off in all sorts of directions to other solution providers and thinkers and deep thinkers in and around this space. So I just look forward to what is just over the horizon for us all in this space.
It's a really good point you point out. The majority of those growers that I spoke to you about, we've got about 23 of them in locally, and the rest are all out throughout the thing. Tom's actually up at Far North Queensland at the innovation test, and I looked at the ones that came in this morning, and guess what? They're all from Far North Queensland. So the more we get the word out, the more we talk about this, the movement will start. And people like Connor do a great job, as does Polly. So appreciate the time tonight to have a chat.
Okay, well, I'll start wrapping things up here. What we normally do at our in-face meetups is we'll generally go and network. And we'll have beers or soft drinks or and food and yeah, and learn about each other's business and what we're individually and as a business, what we're aspiring to achieve in and around the Agtech and Logistics Hub and within this closer community around Toowoomba specifically, being an in-face. But we often get visitors coming from all over Queensland and into northern New South Wales. So our next, as we spoke about it right at the start, our next meetup is on the 26th of July, and it is focused on artificial intelligence. And we're going to have two guests. One of them is Evan Shellshear from Biari, who will be speaking around artificial intelligence and how it applies to the ag industry and what benefits you can expect. And also we'll have the AI Hub coming up to participate in that as well. So we're looking forward to that one. The other thing to put into your calendar is joining us for the 13th of July at the Agri-Food Innovation Forum. So please be there. That's shaping up to be, well, it is a very good program. And if you want to have a look at what's on the program, please go to tsbe.com.au/400M and have a look at the program. You're encouraged to come along. We've got plenty of industry there, plenty of innovators, lots of forward thinking, lots of thought leaders in the room looking at challenges just like this. Our focus for this particular 400M or Agri-Food Innovation Forum is around the supply chain. Connor was speaking before about supply chain issues. We're looking at supply chain innovation and trying to ensure that we get our food off this country into the countries that need it, and also getting supplies into the country as well when we need it. Or alternatively, how we can, I guess, streamline the supply chains. So anyway, they're two events that you should definitely put into your calendar. We'd love to see you along to the meetups. We hold those generally on the last Tuesday of every month, and to the Agri-Food Innovation Forum. So if there are no further questions, and actually, Owen, is there anything else at the Agtech and Logistics Hub any events coming up at the hub that you'd like to share?
We've got a couple of workshops coming up in July, which we're just selling on the dates because it's going to be at the end of July. More so focused at some of the innovators and requests that they wanted to go along with. So one will be around how to do business as a startup. So what's the primary things that you need? And the other one we've got coming up is what is IP? What is vital IP, sorry, and how do you protect yourself? So the two things, keep an eye on the socials. We're locking in some really valuable speakers as well as past innovators who have lived the experience themselves, which I think is always great for innovators to talk to innovators. So yeah, looking forward to those ones at the end of July.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Owen. Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Connor's dog, for being so patient.
He's not patient, believe me.
I think
Adorable.
Puppy wants to go for a walk. But yeah, Thank you all very much. Thank you to all of our guests, all of the attendees that joined us tonight. If you'd like, we have recorded this event, so if you'd like a copy of the recording, please reach out to me at TSBE and we'll provide you with a copy. Alternatively, I think we will make it available on the Agtech and Logistics Hub's website. So please reach out if you would like to contact any of the speakers. I'm more than happy to connect you up with them after this. So once again, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you,
Well done,
everyone.
Steve.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Ciao.